I eloped and married a wealthy man, thinking I had secured both love and luxury. But the night of the wedding shattered my illusions. My heart raced with terror when my husband suggested swapping me with his friend's wife for a night. I tried to escape, but what happened on the dark path that night with a 60-year-old man is something you wouldn't believe. Watch the video till the end to find out, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, if you liked our previous story, comment yes below. "Emin, hurry up! We're getting late for the party," Shahryar called out, his eyes scanning me from head to toe with an intensity that made me blush. I was almost ready, brushing the last strands of my hair, admiring my reflection in the mirror. A girl who had once lived in a small, humble hut now stood in front of an enormous mansion, her dreams of love and luxury seemingly fulfilled. I was among the lucky few who had it all: love, wealth, and comfort. But I didn't realize then that every blessing demands a price. Mine, as I would soon discover, was far heavier than I had ever imagined. Following Shahryar, my husband, I quickly walked out of the room and stepped into the sleek car waiting outside. As we settled into the seats, he shot me another lingering glance. "You look breathtaking tonight," he said, his eyes glowing with admiration. "Anyone who sees you won't be able to take their eyes off you." A soft smile spread across my face as I replied, "But this effort isn't for anyone else. It's all for you." Shahryar's smile deepened, and when I gently held his hand, his expression softened further. "I know you would do anything for me," he whispered. "That's why I love you so much. But tell me, when the time comes, will you prove your loyalty to me, no matter the cost?" His words startled me, and I looked at him with confusion. "Of course, Shahryar," I replied. "I'll do anything for you." He nodded with satisfaction, his gaze returning to the road. "Good. Remember your promise." We were on our way to a grand party at the mansion of his close friend, Manwar. Shahryar came from an affluent background, and most of his friends were similarly wealthy. Lavish parties were a regular part of their high society lifestyle, where elegance and excess were the norms. Tonight was no different. Manwar had organized a grand celebration for his birthday and invited all the elite, including us. Shahryar took pride in showing me off at these gatherings. He often bought me the finest clothes, the most exquisite jewelry, and made sure my makeup was flawless. Tonight I wore a sheer black sari with intricate embroidery. It hugged my body, revealing my bare back and arms, and the blouse was held together by thin, delicate straps. I had never worn anything like this before I married Shahryar, but over time I had grown confident in these outfits, shedding my initial shyness for the sake of pleasing my husband. I no longer felt awkward or embarrassed. Instead, I embraced the attention. The admiration in Shahryar's eyes filled me with pride, and his compliments boosted my ego. "You're the most beautiful woman here," he often told me, and I believed him. Tonight was no exception. After half an hour on the road, we finally arrived at Manwar's mansion. The grand entrance sparkled under the glow of luxurious lights, and as we stepped inside, I saw that most of Shahryar's friends had already gathered, their laughter and chatter filling the air. The birthday cake was cut, and everyone presented expensive gifts. But when Shahryar offered his gift, Manwar didn't take it. Instead, he smirked and said, "I don't want this gift from you. What I need, I'll ask for." Shahryar chuckled loudly and said, "For you, even my life is at your disposal. What's a gift in comparison? Ask for whatever you want." Manwar smiled slyly. "Let's wait until the party ends." "I'll tell you then," he said, his gaze sweeping over me in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. There was something unsettling about the way his eyes lingered, and I could feel the weight of it. But I dismissed the thought and wondered instead what a man as wealthy as Manwar could possibly want from Shahryar. Manwar wasn't just Shahryar's friend, he was also his business partner. He came from a prominent political family and was more influential and wealthier than Shahryar. Saying no to him was out of the question. Manwar had a way of making demands that Shahryar couldn't refuse. So when Manwar declined Shahryar's gift and hinted at something else, Shahryar agreed without even knowing what that something else would be. The party continued, gradually moving toward its conclusion. Throughout the evening, Manwar kept coming up to me, offering food, asking if I wanted a drink, and making polite conversation. I smiled and responded every time, as Sheriar had instructed me. Never offend anyone at these big gatherings, he had warned. These parties are where you build important contacts, and they can make business dealings much easier. At first, I found it strange, but over time, I realized he was right. High society parties were often more about business than celebration. Tonight, however, Manwar's behavior was making me increasingly uncomfortable. He had a wife, a beautiful and elegant woman, yet his eyes remained fixed on me. Still, I endured it quietly, knowing that making a scene would reflect poorly on Sheriar. His wife Faria seemed oblivious, busy chatting with other men. Meanwhile, Manwar hovered around me like a bee circling a flower. As the night wore on, the guests gradually left, and soon only the four of us remained. Sheriar, Manwar, Faria, and me. Manwar arranged for drinks, and we all sat together in the garden. The cold winter air bit at my skin, and the thin fabric of my sari did little to shield me from the chill. I leaned towards Sheriar and whispered, "I'm freezing." But he just smiled and said, "Endure it for a little while longer. Everything will be fine soon." His response puzzled me, but I stayed silent, shivering as I watched Manwar and Sheriar drink and discuss business. Manwar's wife sat nearby, engrossed in her phone while sipping her drink. I remained quiet, listening to them talk about a new business venture that could yield millions of dollars in profit. Sheriar beamed with excitement and thanked Manwar repeatedly for the opportunity. Then, without warning, Manwar extended a glass toward me. "Eman, you should try this," he said. "It's incredible. One sip and you'll feel like you've entered another world." I quickly declined. "No, thank you. I don't drink." Sheriar shot me a sharp look. "You're always so difficult," he muttered. "Manwar is being so polite. Can't you have just a little to be courteous?" His words stung, and I lowered my gaze, feeling the heat of anger mixed with humiliation. Manwar chuckled softly. "No problem. In fact, I'd prefer if you stay fully conscious tonight, Emin," he said, his tone dripping with something sinister. I snapped my head toward him, startled, but before I could say anything, he turned to his wife. "Faria, you've had enough to drink. Go to the room and rest." Faria was clearly intoxicated, her body swaying as she struggled to maintain her composure. Manwar glanced at Sheriar and said, "Why don't you take Faria to her room? I'd like to stay here and have another drink." Sheriar, who had just emptied his glass, immediately stood up, wrapped his arm around Faria's waist, and began helping her to her room. The sight of my husband holding another woman so closely felt like a dagger piercing through my chest. Jealousy burned within me, and my mind raced with confusion. Why hadn't Manwar taken his own wife to her room? Why did he ask Sheriar to do it instead? I couldn't tear my eyes away from them, watching Sheriar's arm around Faria as they disappeared down the hall. Manwar, noticing my unease, smirked and said, "What's the matter? Don't like seeing your husband close to someone else?" His words startled me. I quickly lowered my gaze, pretending not to hear him, but my silence only made him laugh. He leaned closer, settling into the seat beside me, and placed his hand firmly on my shoulder. "Relax, Iman," he said, his voice smooth but predatory. "This is all perfectly normal. You're overthinking it. If your husband can be with Faria, why don't you come closer to me?" His grip tightened, sending a wave of panic through me. I instinctively tried to shift away, but fear paralyzed me. "There's nothing like that," I stammered, desperately searching for a way out of this uncomfortable situation. "Once Sheriar returns, we should leave. It's getting late." Manwar chuckled, clearly amused by my discomfort. "Why the rush?" he asked, leaning back lazily. "What's waiting for you at home that's so important? Aren't you tired of Sheriar by now? How long can you stay satisfied with the same man?" His vulgar words hit me like a slap across the face, and I felt my cheeks flush with shame. How could a man, someone I barely knew, speak to me like this? But before I could respond, Sheriar returned, strolling casually back into the garden. "Faria passed out the moment she hit the bed," he said with a chuckle. Manwar burst into laughter. "I told you," he said, shaking his head. "That woman can't handle her drinks." Then, without missing a beat, he added, "Remember how you promised to give me whatever I asked for, Shariar? Well, here's my request. Tonight, I want to be with something new, something beautiful. I want Iman." The words hung in the air, suffocating me. My heart pounded violently as Manwar continued, completely unfazed by my presence. "You can stay with Faria," he said nonchalantly. "She's already out cold, so you won't have any trouble. I prefer Iman to be fully conscious anyway." Before I could react, Manwar grabbed my hand and pulled me into his lap. A surge of panic swept through me, and I felt as if flames were licking at my skin. I glanced at Manwar, his face inches from mine, and then turned desperately toward Shariar, expecting him to explode with anger, to rip Manwar away from me and demand an explanation. But to my horror, Shariar remained calm. He didn't flinch. He didn't even seem surprised. Instead, he poured himself another glass of whiskey, completely unfazed by the scene unfolding before him. "Let go of me!" I cried, struggling to free myself from Manwar's grip. My voice trembled, but my words were ignored. I called out to Shariar, my voice filled with desperation. "Shariar, let's go home!" He glanced at me briefly, but returned his focus to his drink. "Relax, Emin," he said, as if I were overreacting to something trivial. "It's not a big deal. Manwar can enjoy your company tonight, and I'll join Faria once I finish this glass." I stared at him, disbelief washing over me like a tidal wave. His tone was so casual, so disturbingly normal, as if this were something they had done many times before. My mind raced, trying to process the betrayal. Was this who he truly was? The man I thought loved me, who showered me with affection and gifts, was now willing to trade me like I was nothing more than a token in their twisted game. "No!" I shouted, yanking my arm away from Manwar and stumbling backward. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stand tall. "What's wrong with you, Shariar? I'm your wife, your dignity, your honor, and you're handing me over to your friend like I'm some object?" Shariar chuckled, as if I had just told a joke. "It's just one night, darling. What difference does it make?" His words were venomous, each syllable cutting deeper into my heart. My body trembled with anger and disbelief. "I thought you loved me," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. "I thought you'd do anything for me. But you want to share me with your friend? This is disgusting. I won't be part of your wife-swapping games." Manwar remained seated, smirking, while Shariar finished his drink without a care in the world. "Don't be dramatic," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "It's just for fun. You'll see, it's not as bad as you think." But it was worse than anything I could have imagined. My entire world was crumbling before me, and the man I loved, the man I had trusted, was the one holding the hammer. The weight of betrayal suffocated me, but deep within a spark of defiance ignited. I couldn't let them do this to me. Not tonight. Not ever. I took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of courage I had. Manwar's gaze followed my every move, but I refused to let fear control me. I needed a way out before it was too late. "You were the one who said you loved me so much that you'd go to any lengths for me," Shariar said, his voice calm yet dripping with cruelty. "So just make my friend happy tonight. Consider it an act of love. Besides," he added with a smirk, "I'm getting bored of you anyway. At least this way I'll get to spend the night with Faria, and you won't be bored with Manwar. He's quite the player after all." He winked at me, and for a moment, I couldn't believe my ears. Was this really the man I had married? It had only been 3 months since our wedding, and in all that time I had never seen this side of him. I had no idea that beneath his charming exterior lurked a man so shameless and heartless. "Look, Eamon," Shariar continued, finishing his drink in one gulp, "Manwar is a very dear friend. Today's his birthday, the most special day of his life. How can I say no to him when he asks for something? He's done so much for me. He's about to help me start a huge business that will bring in millions. Can't I do this small favor for him in return?" My mind reeled as I watched him stagger toward Faria's room, his steps unsteady. I called after him, my voice desperate, but he didn't turn around. It was as if he had shut me out completely. Before I could do anything else, Manwar seized the moment, grabbing me forcefully and pulling me into his arms. Despite the alcohol he had consumed, he seemed fully alert, as though drinking this much was second nature to him. Unlike Shariar, who was completely intoxicated, Manwar was in full control. He lifted me effortlessly, ignoring my screams and struggles, and carried me inside the bungalow. My cries echoed in the empty halls, but no one was there to help. He kicked open the door to a room and threw me onto the bed before locking the door behind him. His shirt buttons were undone, and he tossed the shirt carelessly to the side as he approached me. The smell of alcohol wafting from his breath was suffocating. I scrambled to get up, but he was already on me, pinning my wrists to the bed with a strength I couldn't fight against. His breath was hot against my skin, and I could feel the weight of his gaze as he leaned in. "What's the rush, darling?" he whispered, his lips dangerously close to mine. "Do you think Shariar is more of a man than I am? Why else would you be so desperate to go back to him?" The night's just getting started. I turned my head away, tears streaming down my face. "Let me go," I pleaded, but my words only seemed to fuel his arrogance. "You're here because your husband sent you," he said, his voice smooth yet menacing. "So why are you resisting? You should be thanking me for making this night memorable." His eyes roamed over my body, lingering on every exposed inch of skin. With one swift motion, he tugged at the edge of my sari, shifting the fabric away from my shoulder. The thin blouse straps that crossed my shoulders were the only barrier left, and he tugged at them with his teeth, loosening them further. "Shariar is one lucky man," he murmured, his eyes gleaming with desire. "A woman like you, so perfect, so desirable. And look at me. I have all the money in the world, yet I'm stuck with someone like Furia. She's nothing but skin and bones from all her dieting, always glued to her phone, completely oblivious to me. I can't remember the last time I felt any joy being around her." I clenched my fist, trying to suppress the disgust rising in my throat as he continued. "But you," he said, his fingers tracing my arm, "you're exactly the kind of woman I've always wanted, full of life, full of beauty. The way you cater to Shariar's every need, how you're always by his side, how I wish you were mine." I fought back, pushing against him with all my strength, but his weight was too much. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing against my neck as he whispered, "Just think of me as Shariar for tonight. Let's erase all the emptiness from my life together." As he pressed his lips to my skin, a surge of rage and fear exploded within me. Summoning every ounce of strength, I shoved him hard. He stumbled back, falling off the bed and landing on the floor with a loud thud. He cursed under his breath, hurling insults at me as he tried to regain his balance. I didn't wait to see what he would do next. I bolted for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. My fingers fumbled with the lock, the sound of Manwar's footsteps growing louder behind me. Just as I was about to twist the knob, I felt his hand on my shoulder. "Where do you think you're going?" he growled, yanking me backward. I stumbled, my back slamming against the wall. His eyes were wild with anger, and for a moment I thought this was the end. But something inside me refused to give up. I kicked him as hard as I could, aiming for his shin. He cried out in pain, giving me just enough time to dart past him. I flung the door open and raced down the hallway, my bare feet pounding against the cold marble floor. I could hear him cursing behind me, but I didn't dare look back. My only thought was to escape, get out of this house and find help. As I reached the main door, I pulled it open and ran into the icy night. The cold air bit at my skin, but I didn't care. My mind was consumed with the thought of survival. Somewhere in the distance I could hear Manwar shouting, but his voice grew fainter as I pushed myself to run faster. I didn't know where I was going. The winding road stretched endlessly before me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Before I could escape, Manwar lunged at me from behind, grabbing me by the waist and forcefully throwing me back into the bed. His hands were ruthless, yanking at my sari with such intensity that the fabric unraveled and fell away. I clutched my arms around my chest, tears streaming down my face as I begged him to stop. "Please, let me go. I'm an honorable woman, a respectable girl. Don't do this." But his eyes had darkened with something far more sinister. It was as if the devil had taken complete control. His breathing was heavy as he leaned in closer. Grabbing my wrist, he dragged me off the bed and towards the attached bathroom. Before I could resist, he shoved me into the large tub filled with cold water. My breath hitched as the icy chills spread through my body, but fear gripped me tighter than the cold. Manwar climbed into the tub after me, his predatory gaze unwavering. My mind was spinning with panic, and my limbs felt paralyzed. I kicked and splashed, desperately trying to free myself. But he was too strong, pinning me down in the water. His hand covered my mouth, muffling my screams. Water splashed violently around us, creating an eerie, chaotic noise. I could feel his rough hands and the burning sensation of the scratches and bruises forming across my body. Tears blurred my vision as I thrashed beneath him, the water rising and falling in waves around us. My muffled cries were lost in the chaos. I knew my dignity, my honor, everything was on the verge of being destroyed. But deep inside, something ignited, a desperate need to survive. With every ounce of strength I had left, I pressed my hands against his chest and pushed him down into the water. His eyes widened in shock as his head submerged beneath the surface. I held him there, my hands trembling but firm. His body jerked violently at first, struggling for breath, but slowly his movements weakened. For a moment I thought I had killed him. My hands loosened, and I stumbled out of the tub, gasping for air, my body drenched and shaking uncontrollably. My sari clung to me, soaked through, but I didn't stop to fix it. I couldn't. All I could think about was escape. I ran out of the bathroom, my bare feet slipping on the wet floor, and burst into the hallway. My breath came in ragged gasps, and water dripped from my clothes, leaving a trail behind me. I didn't dare look back. I didn't care whether Manwar was dead or alive. All I knew was that I had to get out of there before he regained consciousness. Bursting through the bungalow's front door, I was greeted by the frigid night air. It was freezing, but I didn't feel the cold. My mind was too numb, my body too driven by the instinct to survive. My hair clung to my face, soaked and disheveled, as I stumbled forward into the empty night. As I ran, a sickening thought struck me. Shehryar. He was still inside in that room with Faria. My husband, the man I had given everything to, had sold my dignity for the night in exchange for his twisted desires. My heart ached, not just from fear, but from betrayal. I had left behind my family, my home, and my life for this man. I had believed in his love, only to discover that he was willing to trade me like an object. Tears streamed down my face as I stood outside the mansion, my breath forming clouds in the cold air. The silence of the night felt deafening, and I struggled to think of where to go. The streets were deserted, and the clock on a distant tower showed it was just past 2 a.m. Panic welled inside me as I scanned my surroundings, my gaze darting from shadow to shadow. Then, out of nowhere, a figure emerged. A man, roughly 60 years old with a frail appearance, but an unsettling amount of strength in his movements. My body tensed, and fear gripped me tighter. He walked toward me, and before I could react, he grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the road. I struggled, but his grip was ironclad, much stronger than I had expected. "Let go of me!" I screamed, but he silenced me with a hand over my mouth, dragging me toward a neighboring bungalow. My heart pounded as he led me through the back entrance, into what appeared to be servant quarters. The smell of damp walls and mildew filled the air as he locked the door behind us. I backed away, trembling as he turned toward me. His eyes, though aged, held a strange mix of curiosity and determination. My breath hitched as he stepped closer. "Don't make a sound," he whispered softly. "There's no need to panic. Just sit on the bed quietly, and everything will be fine." He walked over to a small wardrobe, opened it, and pulled out a thick blanket. Handing it to me, he said, "Wrap this around yourself. You'll catch a cold if you stay in those wet clothes any longer." I stared at him, my eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "Why did you bring me here?" The old man sighed and sat down on a nearby chair, resting his hands on his knees as he studied me. "You're safer here than you were out there," he said, his voice steady but cryptic. "Now sit down and warm yourself. We'll talk when you've calmed down." Despite my fear, his tone was oddly calming, and I couldn't sense any immediate threat. But the trauma of everything that had just happened weighed heavily on my mind. My body remained frozen in place, unsure whether to trust him or run for the door. "I'm the caretaker of this bungalow," the old man said, his voice steady yet kind. "It belongs to my employer who lives abroad. No one else stays here, so you don't have to worry. You're safe for now. But if I hadn't brought you here immediately, you would have been in grave danger. The guards were just about to return. If they had found you outside, they would have dragged you back and handed you over to that beast." I stared at him in shock, unable to process how he knew so much. My throat was dry and my voice came out as a whisper. You know about Manwar?" The old man nodded grimly. "I know exactly who he is. Manwar Khan has a reputation. He's a predator, a merciless monster who preys on innocent, vulnerable girls like you. Your luck saved you tonight." The guards had stepped out to grab tea at a nearby hotel, or they would have been standing outside the mansion, making sure no one escaped. Before they left, they told me to keep an eye on the entrance. They weren't worried because they thought no one would dare venture near this part of the property. He sighed heavily, running his hand through his thinning hair. "I was standing at the gate when I saw you running. I recognized the fear in your eyes. I've seen it before in the eyes of other girls who've fallen victim to him. That's when I knew I had to help you. If I hadn't pulled you inside, you'd be back in his clutches by now." The weight of his words crushed me, making it hard to breathe. My hands trembled as I clutched the blanket he had given me tighter around my body. I wanted to believe this nightmare was over, but his next words filled me with dread. "You'll need to stay hidden here for a few days," he warned. "Once Manwar Khan realizes you've escaped, he and his guards will search for you like madmen. They'll tear through the area looking for you, but they won't think to check this bungalow. No one comes here." The old man stood and began pacing the room. His footsteps were soft, but the seriousness in his voice made them sound like thunder. "Just stay in this room," he continued. "Don't make any noise and don't leave until I tell you it's safe." With that, he turned and left, shutting the door quietly behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating, but I exhaled deeply, finally allowing myself a moment to breathe. The kindness and decency I saw in the old man's eyes gave me hope. For the first time that night, I felt like I might survive this. I sat on the cold floor, wrapped in the blanket, and spent the entire night wide awake. My mind replayed everything that had happened. The betrayal, the terror, the fight for survival. Tears silently streamed down my face, but I didn't make a sound. I couldn't afford to. Morning came slowly, the first rays of sunlight creeping into the room through the small window. I heard soft footsteps approaching, and the door creaked open. It was the old man, carrying a tray of food and water. He set it down in front of me and spoke softly. "Eat something," he said. "You'll need your strength. Manwar Khan's guards are still searching for you. They're everywhere. If they catch you, they won't show mercy, especially if they believe you attacked Manwar last night." I froze, the memory of the bathtub incident flashing before my eyes. I had pushed him down with all my strength and he had stopped moving. Had I killed him? My stomach twisted, and the thought of eating made me feel sick. I looked at the old man, my voice barely audible. Did I kill him?" He shook his head. "I don't know," he admitted. "But it doesn't matter. What matters is staying alive. Whether he's dead or alive, his men will hunt you down. You can't let them find you." Tears welled up again, but I forced myself to stay composed. "How long do I have to hide here?" I asked. "They're powerful people. They'll find me eventually, and when they do, they'll kill me." The old man knelt down in front of me, his eyes filled with sympathy. "No, they won't," he said confidently. "This will pass in a few days. Manwar Khan's obsession with you will fade, and he'll find another girl to chase after. That's the kind of man he is. But you need to be cautious around your husband. He's the real threat now." His words made my heart skip a beat. I stared at him in disbelief. "What do you mean? How do you know my husband?" He smiled faintly. I don't know him personally, he replied, but a man who would hand over his wife to his friend. That's not someone you can trust. He will come looking for you, not out of love or concern, but to maintain control over you. Be careful, child. I shivered, not from the cold, but from the truth behind his words. The man I had once trusted with my life had betrayed me in the worst possible way. How could I ever face him again? Thank you, I whispered, my voice cracking. You saved my life. The old man nodded, standing up again. Rest now, he said. You'll need your strength for whatever comes next. As he left the room, I curled up on the floor, the blanket providing little comfort against the storm raging inside me. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to shut down. Thoughts of Sheriar, Manoir, and the betrayal that had torn my world apart kept me awake. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I wasn't the same woman who had walked into that party the night before. I was broken, but I wasn't defeated. Not yet. The guards told me everything, the old man said, his gaze heavy with sympathy. Your husband handed you over to Manoir Khan himself. That's why it's best if you never contact him again. I sat there in stunned silence, the weight of betrayal suffocating me all over again. The man I had loved, trusted, and given everything to had sold me like an object. My throat tightened, but before I could speak, the old man continued. I'll arrange for you to return to your family in a few days, he said gently. You can stay safe with them, but I shook my head firmly. No, I whispered. I can't go back. I left my home in the dead of night, shaming my parents by eloping with Sheriar. If I go back now, they'll be humiliated even further. My husband will look for me, and the first place he'll go is my parents' house. I can't risk that. The old man fell into deep thought, rubbing his hands together as he paced the room. After a moment, he nodded. All right, he said. I'll make arrangements to send you to my village. You can stay with my wife for a while until things settle down. I looked at him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Why are you helping me so much, Baba? I asked, tears brimming in my eyes. He avoided my gaze and sighed heavily, as though the weight of years of regret sat on his shoulders. Because, daughter, he said softly, I've witnessed too many women lose their dignity in front of me. I've seen countless innocent girls torn apart by that monster, Manoir Khan, while I stood by, helpless. His guards, even I, we were all silent spectators. But this time I had the chance to save someone, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. I couldn't stop the tears from falling as I listened to him. His words carried pain, but also redemption. A week later, the old man wrapped me in a full burqa, concealing me from head to toe. Under the cover of night, he led me out of the bungalow, cautiously checking the surroundings, before guiding me to a waiting vehicle. The air was cold, and my heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope. He personally took me to his village, leaving me in the care of his wife, a kind woman who embraced me as her own daughter. You're safe now, she whispered, holding me tightly. We'll protect you. The old man returned to the city, and I stayed behind, hidden from the world that had betrayed me. Days turned into months, and it has now been 3 or 4 months since that night. I haven't contacted Sheriar or my family. Instead, I've built a quiet life here in the village, where I'm treated with respect and love. The old man's wife has become a mother to me, and I've begun to heal from the scars left behind by betrayal and fear. But sometimes, late at night, I lie awake, haunted by the choices I made. If only I hadn't stepped over my parents' threshold that night, eloping with a man I thought loved me. If only I had listened to them, maybe I wouldn't have found myself in Manoir Khan's clutches. Maybe I wouldn't have had to fight for my life. Yet despite everything, I am grateful. Grateful to Baba, the man who risked everything to save me. In a world filled with darkness, he was a beacon of light, a reminder that good people still exist. One evening, as we sat by the fire, Baba revealed something that shook me to my core. Your husband tried to contact your family, he said, but when he didn't find you there, he gave up. He's lost everything now. Manoir Khan, furious over what happened that night, has taken revenge. He seized all of Shahryar's business assets, leaving him penniless. Everything is under Manwar's control now. I sat there, processing the news. The man who had once flaunted his wealth and power, who had treated me as a pawn in his selfish games, had been reduced to nothing. I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even vengeance. But instead, all I felt was a strange sense of justice. Manwar may have taken revenge, I said softly, but it wasn't just him. This was fate. This was karma. The universe always balances itself. The old man nodded in agreement, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of years gone by. Yes, child, he said. What happened to Shahryar wasn't just Manwar's doing. It was the hand of destiny, punishing him for what he did to you. I leaned back, the warmth of the fire soothing my tired soul. Life had taken everything from me and then given me a second chance. Though I had lost my old identity, I had gained a new one that was stronger, wiser, and determined never to be broken again. For now, I live in peace, hidden away from the chaos of the past. I've learned to smile again, to find joy in small moments. And as I look around the simple village home where I've found safety, I realize that while life may be unpredictable, it also has a way of giving you exactly what you need when you least expect it. I no longer think of Shahryar with pain or longing. His betrayal no longer haunts me. Instead, I focus on the new life ahead of me, a life where I am free to rebuild myself on my terms. Yes, the world has its share of evil, but it also has people like Baba, people who remind you that goodness still exists, even in the darkest of places. In the end, fate delivered justice. And while Shahryar lost everything, I found something far more valuable: myself.